Friends and family, what's up? This is Nick Cates along with Ron Evans and Darren Gray, your faithful friends who've been homies and co-conspirators for more than 40 years after meeting at USC. And we come to you with We've Got Issues. It is our discussion about what's going on in the world and in our lives that might resonate with you. So as always, we invite you to share our broadcast with those who might be like-minded or not so like-minded, and always leave a comment, and a like always helps too. So each week we come to you and we bring our particular perspective and expertise. Maybe you resonate with one or another of us. Maybe you think we're all full of it, but we always are authentic, coming to you with what we really think. So each week we have one of us that has a topic to discuss, and the rest of us jump in and dogpile all over that. But we'll see what happens this time, because our man Ron is going to be our group leader today, and he's going to bring us the topic that is in his mind. Take it away, Ron.
Well, thank you. And although I live in Northern Virginia now, my roots are still squishy, granola, tree-hugging Southern California. So the topic is going to be one that is not a macroeconomic, political, geopolitical conversation. It's going to be more of a personal one. And I'm going to ask you guys to share your thoughts. And the conversation that I want to have is one where I was watching some videos this week, because retirement and happiness, fulfillment are always top of mind as we get older. And one of the things that I saw was it's called the Cantril Ladder. And the Cantril Ladder is what is used to identify the happiest countries in the world. But you can also apply it to a personal level. And I think we have a clip that will explain it. So if you don't mind showing the clip, we can talk about it on the other side.
A global group of leading researchers have been working on ways to measure and explain happiness, as well as looking at why some countries are happier than others. They look at data from the Gallup World Poll. Included in the survey is the Cantril Ladder question. It asks people to imagine a ladder. The top of the ladder represents the best possible life for you, and the bottom of the ladder represents the worst possible life for you. On which step of the ladder would you say you personally feel you stand at this time? More than 100,000 people each year respond from all around the world, giving us a picture of a country's overall happiness.
All right. So obviously it's subjective. There's two questions on the table. And I will tell you up front, I started thinking about this question 3 days ago, and I locked in on a number, and then I changed the number last night. The first number is, where would you rank on that 10-rung ladder now? And the second question is, where do you feel you're going to be in 5 years? So what's your happiness now? Where do you think your happiness is going to be in 5 years? And again, they could be lower, higher, doesn't matter. Okay. So you guys got the game?
Got it.
All right, here we go. So I'll go first, since I'm going to be the vulnerable one, since I brought this thing up. Where do I feel on the ladder I am right now? At first, I thought I was a 9. Because when I think about my origin story and the humble roots to where I am now, I'm like, I can't imagine being any happier than I am now. But then I took it down a rung, because I also look at my family and I say, okay, where are they? And what are the factors that are playing on us as a family unit that we have that maybe contribute to not being as happy as we could be? And I think that when I look at our daughters that are concerned about a world with AI and what that means to their career, I look at my wife and she got a promotion, but she's working really hard. We have my mother-in-law at the house. There's a lot of dynamics that it's like, I could imagine a happier life than I have now. There's still room. So I would say I'm an 8 right now because I'm concerned about some various elements of our family life. And where do I think I'm going to be in 5 years? I think I'll be at the 9, because I believe that hopefully through continuing to help our girls and the relationship we have, they will thrive in their careers. My wife and I will be retired, and hopefully in various places in Europe, just doing our thing when it's not football season. So I'd like to think that I'm an 8 right now, with the caveats that I mentioned, and I'd like to think I'm going to be a 9. But truthfully, the upward mobility that I've seen from, again, truck driver's son, it's hard to imagine a happier life, but there's still some issues we're dealing with. So 8 today, 9 in 5 years. Who's next?
Darren, you are the open heart of the group. So you're the guy who's the most transparent and in touch with his feelings. So,
all right. So in a previous episode, you talked about stoicism, and I tend to be more of a stoic. I can honestly say that for most of my life, I have not been happy. It wasn't even a concept or reality. I've had happy moments, like, the birth of my daughter, spending time with my grandkids, achieving, a success. I have moments of happiness, but in general, and I was on the plane when I was texting back. I've not had a happy life, and I don't have a happy life. It's just the way it's always been. I have moments of, that there's joy and happiness, but in every aspect of my life, with the exception of the time I spend with the fellas, I'm the responsible party always. Everything falls on me. I am the foundation and the base to make sure that everything is on track, whether it's with my sibs, my kids, my grandkids, at work. It all falls on me, and it always has. And so that sense of responsibility, and I talked about in other places being mission focused, it has not been a happy life. I do have happy moments, like when we're at Ron's birthday or one of our other friends' birthday, or just hanging out with the fellas. That's about the only time I'm not obligated.
So put a number on it, Darren. Why don't you answer with a number?
4.
Really?
Yeah, because it's always that way. Even I love my mom. I went back there, but when I'm there, I'm responsible for her roof, responsible for this, responsible for that. I don't get days off ever. It's always on me to maintain the entire gray infrastructure. When my nieces and my nephews, everybody, it all falls on me. I'm the one who has to be that guy for everyone. And even, and my wife's not home, so I can talk quietly. Even with my wife, I am responsible for being the one to give in. In an early episode, falling back to a defensible position, it falls on me. But it's always been that way. And so I've never been happy. Now, if you talk about satisfaction and contentment, I would put that at an 8 or a 9. I'm content with my life as is. It's like, what? Things are humming along. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah, what's the difference? What's the difference between happiness and contentment?
Well, for me, contentment is that I am hitting all my targets, doing everything I need to do, and making sure that everything is still working.
You're running the business.
Running the business of life. I'm adequately insured. I'm well capitalized. I got retirement. I've got this. I got that. I got money aside to help, a family member who needs this or that or this. My mom needs help with her property. I can fly there whenever I want to help her, spend some time there. At work, I'm well respected. There's all these things, the operations of life. Content. I'm right there. Happiness, never been there. It would be a 4. And then I'd say in retirement, it may go down because of what we talked about in the previous episode about that purpose, having, your identity tied into work so much. So now I'm looking to see what I can develop so that when I do retire, I have that same purpose, whether it's, doing the great bird count or counting squirrels, or whatever it is that's going to capture me. I need to find that thing so that it doesn't go down, because when I stop, what is it, the planes and trains from being there on time, when that is no longer my responsibility, then what's next? And so that's why I was having trouble when I was texting you. It was like, I've never been happy. Like, happy is not a thing. It's always been elusive. I get happy moments, but for the most part, it's just not been a thing for me.
Ooh.
I don't. We need a moment.
Yeah, you know what? That is a uniquely American. I feel uniquely American sentiment. That your life is consumed, right? Not yours being Darren, but many people's lives are consumed with the obligations of life that obscure the ability to just sit back and be, just be happy.
Right.
And so I think that's incredibly astute. And I think that's well considered. Like I've not seen Darren go that deep into his own psyche before. And I can appreciate what has come out on the other side, right? Because I think he fits into a category of people that for whom retirement, for example, is an open question. It's not even something, I don't know, Darren, do you look forward to retirement or no?
No.
Right. I thought you would say no, because now it's like, so now what? Because you're so used to being the tip of the spear, right?
Yeah.
That to not have to do that is almost like, well, that doesn't sound like fun. I've got nothing to compel me forward, right?
Well, actually, yeah. And Darren, is work an escape for you? And in retirement, you wouldn't have that escape?
To some degree, it's an escape because when I'm at work, I'm full tilt problem solving, figuring things out. My brain is active. I'm doing things, innovating, creating. That's where that part of me gets to happen. I get to be innovative and creative and solving. Even when stuff is, falling apart, because of external factors, it's like I can pull a rabbit out of my hat, and it's always, fighting the good fight. And the other areas, it's just keeping the trains running and dealing with the obstacles that come up, the human things that come up. A text message from one of my kids that's going to take me, time to help them work through a problem. I'm their dad. I love helping them. I love helping my mom and my sisters. So it's not about, the burden and it's so awful. It's just what I've always done. And there's not a lot of room for happiness and joy in that space.
Okay, question though. And by the way, Darren, you said 4 today. In 5 years, what's your number?
Just I think it'll drop down to 2 to 3.
Wow. Okay. So yeah.
Woo.
Again, you're down towards the misery section of the ladder, just so you know, just so we're playing at home. So let's pull on. I get the work where in work in general, you get immediate feedback and hopefully satisfaction within a quarter or maybe a year that I implemented something, I got the result. Do you feel that you don't see the positive outcomes in your non-work, like when you're working with your daughter or your mom or whoever, so you don't get that endorphin that says, hey, I'm valued, or I did a good job?
Not really, because there's there's the appreciation. Oh yeah, thank you. But there's always something around. In another episode, we talked about when you said I was holding out. The Barry Sanders model of you hand the ball to the ref and you go to the sideline and you wait for the next play, and that's generally what it feels like. It's wow, dealt with that issue, and I'm just waiting for the next one. And so there's not the same satisfaction. Whereas at work, there's a ending point, a culmination. There's this kid got into the university of their choice. That part ended, or we got the award from the city council, or I got a huge grant or a huge donation. So there is a period that comes at the end of efforts at work, even when there are budget cuts, when I am able to still field my team with the budget cuts. There's a period there. Whereas outside of that, it's a comma. It's a comma. It's like, all right, get ready for the next one. And it's all gone. It's all, it never ends. It's just, being ready for the next one.
So I was talking to our friend in Denver, and it was a brief conversation, and he's going through it because he's got a whole bunch of people in his house. And I told him, I'm like, dude, you need to get your behind on a plane and come out for a football game. And Darren, when I listen to you, I have the same advice, but you live in LA. So, but
football games give me stress.
Right.
Run the ball.
Well, we'll save that for our August episodes. But I think that what I'm also hearing is, and I know how much fun I had in 2016 when we all went out for the Alabama game. I'm hearing that among our friends, we need to get out of LA. I mean, because I think that what I'm hearing from you is you get energized and you have those moments of happiness, and it helps you manage through the rest of the slog.
Yeah, whenever we get together, the fellas, because we've known each other for 4 decades, and we know each other probably better than our wives, our everybody. We just know, and so I get to be that guy. I get to, like, not quite Detroit Darren, but the LA Darren when he first got here from Detroit Darren. That guy. I get to be that guy.
Do-rag Darren.
Do-rag Darren. I get to be do-rag Darren. I don't have to be Dr. Darren Gray. But I don't have to be that guy. I don't have to be Dad. I can just be me. When we're all around each other, I can be me. We can bag. We do, and I can say stuff. And there's the wall, the restrictions. I'm still guarded because, as you say, I don't really expose personal stuff. But I get to be me, and that is when I get those moments of happiness where it's like, oh, that was kind of cool. But other than that, I have to be that guy.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we'll go to Nick. There's a bank error in your favor, and tomorrow you wake up and you realize there's $10 million in your bank account. Okay, is that going to change your score?
I'll put it to you like this: I don't play the lottery because I don't want to win.
What?
Darren is a unique person, man. That's a unique perspective.
I told my mom, this is what I told my mom. I said, in order for me to win the lottery, God will have to have me driving down the street and the winning lottery ticket blow into my car in order for me to win the lottery.
I got to follow up, Nick. I got to follow up. All right, Darren, hang on a second, okay? A rich uncle you didn't know died, and they put $10 million in your bank account, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does that change your score and your perception of happiness?
No, not at all. Not at all. Because I still have to be that guy. Now it's the same guy with rich people problems, like, oh, I need money for this, and I need money for that, and I need money for it's the same problem. Like all the lottery winners who go broke because everybody it's because it's not money. It's not money. It's the role that I default into. And it's, part of it's me. So like when I joined the Guard, I specifically joined as enlisted and not as an officer because I didn't want to be in charge. I wanted somebody just to give me orders and I can just do my stuff. But inevitably, who I am becomes that. And so like I didn't want to get promoted. They just kept promoting me to then I was responsible for the entire IT system of the Guard. That was not my intent. I didn't even want to go there. That's just what I ended up. I was like, I just want to be a grunt. I just want, you give me, tell me to go wash down the Jeep. I want to wash down the Jeep. That's what, when I first got in the Guard, that's where the, the joy was. I was just a grunt doing my thing. But over time, when people look me up and they look at my background and they go, oh, we're going to give you this time because you're uniquely qualified. It just always happens that I don't get to be that guy ever.
We're gonna have to keep Darren close, because he's on the edge, man. Darren's on the edge over here,
But no, it's always been this way. It's like I don't know any other way of being. It's always been this way. And
to a certain degree, Darren, it's become a choice. Like you have chosen a line of perspective that basically says Darren's got to be the guy on the front line. Like you don't get to play the rear. Even when you're trying to play the rear, you somehow end up being, at the tip of the spear. And that's that comes with a lot of agita, so to speak.
A lot of stress.
Yeah, you just don't ever get to just be in the passenger seat,
Yeah. And Darren, the reason I asked the money question is because as I was thinking about this topic this week, the question that I really debated was, what role does socioeconomics play in happiness? And I tell you, if I had $10 million in the bank tomorrow, my score would go from 8 to 10.
8 to 12.
You jumping off the
ladder. I mean, putting more rungs on the ladder.
Right.
Because, and there's a radio show guy named Steve Zabin he's a sports guy. And he famously said, money doesn't buy you happiness, but it does put the ball first in goal at the one. I think that, when I look at our situation, if I look at our daughters and my concerns about their future careers, in AI, with $10 million, I could take off a couple $1 million and invest in a company or whatever to help them get that leg up. Maybe start their own company, whatever. I have the ability now to affect the happiness of others that will generate happiness for me. And so I was really curious when I asked you about it and you said money would not make any difference. Because Nick, I think you're right. There is something that's very personal here where no external stimulus is going to change his view.
Well, I'll give you some perspective. My kids had way more benefits than I did. They had opportunities and I provided them. They don't have the same drive.
Yep.
They just don't. And so that's why I'm saying that with my children, with my nieces and nephews, with my sibs, it's not a money issue. Because, when my dad passed away, he gave money to a number of my nieces and nephews and they blew through it and they were back in the same spot. So money's not going to solve that problem. Like when you get an inheritance and you blow through it and then within a year ask me for money, that it's not a money issue. It's what I see it in part of it, I think, or two elements, and it's unique to the Black community, I think, is that because we don't have the community that we once had, a lot of our families fall to a patriarch or matriarch who is the person responsible and all that pressure. It used to be like the grandparents, the uncles and aunts. Well, for my wing of the family, it's me. And, it just is. And so I think when you have communities or extended families, it's a shared load, right? they're, like I remember, like my uncles, and they were all there, but now they're all gone, and it sort of falls on me, and there's no backup. There's no backup. My mom used to say that when she was raising us, because she was single parent, when she turned over on her pillow to ask advice, there was nobody there, so she had to give her own advice, and it feels that way. And my mom, she did her time, so I'm very happy to be that support for her. But I think in terms of happiness, like I said, satisfaction way up there, because like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But happiness, it's just never been there for me.
Do you have a definition of happiness? Like, I would be happy if.
Ooh.
Probably something I couldn't put into words per se, but because it's a feeling, right? It would be like, I would be happy if I didn't have the weight of the world on my shoulder. If it weren't all up to me, I would be happy if I could truly share the load. If I had folks that would pick up part of it, where it wasn't all on me. And again, no dissing of any family member. People are who they are, and they're at different spaces and everything. But in the bottom line, ever since as far back as I can remember, I used to always say this thing to myself, even when I was young. I would say, "And I walk alone," and that was always something that, no matter what, at the end of the day, and I walk alone. Of course, God's walking with me and everything. And I'm thankful for the gifts. I'm thankful for the opportunity. And I'm thankful that God has given me everything he has given me to be in the situation at this time. So, I'm very appreciative that I've been chosen to be that person. But I don't remember a time where I didn't have that sense of I walk alone.
Hey, who chose you, Darren? Who made you that person? That for whom all the responsibility for all your family and everybody falls on you. Who made you that?
I think I was that way. Like, my mom tells a story, like when we were younger and she didn't have enough money to buy. One person would get shoes every year because we didn't report. And in Detroit, when it snowed, you need shoes. And so one year, it was my turn to get shoes, and I knew my sister needed them. So I told my mom, I'll just wear my shoes again for another year. And I must have been, she said, 4 or 5 when I said that, where I would save my shoes. I would save them just in case somebody else needed to buy shoes. That's just who I've always been. I've not, like, I don't know any other way of being. And, in my life, that's just always been my role.
So in other words, today, that's a role you choose for yourself, right? As opposed to saying, like, you could choose to be responsible for everybody, or you could choose to be responsible for some subset of that, or you could choose to be responsible for nobody. Would any of those decisions, other than the one you've made where I choose to be responsible for anyone, would any of those other decisions make you any happier, or would they be counterbalanced by some level of guilt or whatever for not being responsible for all those people?
Well, not guilt, but what, and we talked about this in an early episode, falling back to a defensible position. There comes a point where I go, all right, this is too much. I need to pare back some stuff. And so I fall back to a defense, like, what is the bare minimum of things that I need to do? And so I do prune the tree from time to time, and that's what I end up doing. But the role still stays the same.
But what's the driver for paring back? Is it your stress level, i.e. your blood pressure reached a certain level where you're like, I need to pare back because it's affecting my health?
No, I get a sense of I'm done. It's just something that happens. Like when I retired from the Guard, I was walking back to my office and I said, I'm done. Same thing with the HOA. I came up here and I was like, I'm done. I just get a sense of I'm done. And that's when I let it go.
So what would happen? I mean, God forbid, what would happen if you were just gone tomorrow? What would happen
Well,
to this infrastructure that is completely built upon your shoulders?
well, I'm heavily insured, so for everybody else, the money would make a big difference.
So you're the ATM, in other words.
I am.
That's the role you play. So
Okay.
if you replace Darren with money, everyone will be equally happy.
Well, probably not happy that I'm gone, but
No. And again, I realize it's a morbid question, but the point of the question is, in a world where they can't depend on you, what happens to them?
oh,
And
people
if
still get by. People
well,
still
then
get by.
but if that's the answer, then why are you so focused on being that support structure when you've already admitted they'll get by? Why don't you
Well,
start
people will
that
get
today?
well. People will get by anyway. No one's gonna like if I cease to exist. People aren't just gonna grow up and die. So
So why
that
can't
part I
you roll
know.
back now?
Well, I do. That's what I'm saying. I fall back to a defensible position as to what I
You said from
see is
time to time you do
from
that.
time to time. Oh yeah, from time to time. I get a sense of here are the things that need to be let go, and I just let them go, and I pare it down. But again, it's not burdensome in that way. It's just I don't know any other way of being. Like this is my identity. I've always been this way. You know, going back as far as I remember, and even before I remember, this is just who I've always been.
Yeah, but to Nick's question, paint the picture of how you will find happiness in this life.
It's just finding happiness is like I said, I'm still trying to figure it out for retirement, but for like the joy and the happiness comes from me getting to be me. You know, not having to be responsible. Like when we all go out, I don't have to be responsible. Like when we go places, I get to just hang out and be with the fellas. But I don't get that.
I think we need to like get season tickets to the Dodgers or something, so there's more interaction.
But again, that's the times that we do spend together, it's definitely fulfilling. But like I'll give you for instance, like whenever my daughter has a neighbor's kid that she keeps up with, and we're at Chuck E. Cheese, and I'm watching that kid the entire time, and like I'm making sure that kid is safe because I notice the other adults aren't. It's people just don't, they don't have
your problem, bro. It's not your problem.
Yes, but somebody walks off with that kid, then
you just said your daughter is responsible for the child.
Yes. Well, she's not. She just helps out. But I'm watching this kid run all around, and I'm watching, and so my daughter's following me, following the kid. But it's in my nature to like, somebody's got to keep an eye on this kid because the people over there, they're having a good time, and this kid's just running all over the place. And Chuck E. Cheese, they match your little wristband and everything, but all it takes is 1 second, and that kid's gone.
I think we need to have a GoFundMe for Darren's therapy.
Right.
This was not meant to be the Darren therapy podcast.
Right. And to that point, I'm going to take the ball from Darren because there's certain things that resonate with me about your perspective. My point of view about life in general is that everything is about choices and trade-offs, right? Like so whoever I am, however I feel, whatever I do is a acknowledgement of a choice that I have made. And to this point about happiness also is a choice. I would venture to say that Darren is most happy being how he is, right? Like that's what makes him feel himself, secure, whatever, right? Like that's just, and it may be a learned behavior, it may be a default behavior from how he is, whatever. Who are we to diagnose? But as it relates to me, I know that if I had the rich uncle that left me the $10 million, right, it would definitely raise my happiness because I cannot divorce in the world that we live in, economic security, to the extent that you can have such, has an impact on happiness. And so the reason why I would say that today I am a 6 on the scale is not because I'm unhappy. I am not unhappy at all. But there are constraints on my ability to fully express who I want to be in the world, free of the economic, encumbrances that come with that. right? That, that hopefully will be alleviated, in retirement, so to speak, right? Where I hope to be an 8 or a 9. I don't think that one ever gets to a 10, because I think the nature of the human condition is to always want more. There's always something more that you're after, right? Whether it's more time, like the older you get, the more time you want, potentially, right? So you're like, wow, so the main amount of my life is behind me, and I'm enjoying this life that I have, but maybe there are physical constraints on you. Maybe there are, other kinds of constraints because of your age that could come into play. So you never get everything all at once where it all comes together, potentially. But I'm open to be wrong about that. I'm open to be wrong about that. I'm open to be blissfully surprised at the level of happiness that you can have in this life, right? I feel like in this life, the way it is set up is that you're always in the pursuit of something that you think will make you happy. And so, as I said, I'm at a 6 now. It's only because my version of happiness is having the complete freedom to pursue the things I like just because I like them. We talked in a previous episode about my desire to become more familiar with classic literature and classic philosophy, and having the time to do that just for the sheer enjoyment of doing it, right? Of putting those thoughts into my head and having the time to do it without any concern about what I'm not doing while I'm doing that. To me, that's happiness. To me, happiness is like, okay, I can use, like we're doing this podcast, social media, not because I want to get something from it monetarily or whatever, but because I fancy myself a creative person and I want to do things that are creative, regardless of whether they are economically, profitable or not. Like, I look forward to that time when I have that ability, whether it's because I hit the lottery or because my investments paid off or because whatever happens, and I have the ability to truly go where I want to go, do what I want to do, not worry about money and all those kinds of things. That to me is happiness, right? That's the happiness that I am pursuing. I'm clear on what my happiness looks like in the future, to the ability to be able to give to others, to be able to contribute, to be a contributing factor in the overall progress of those around me who I come in contact with, who may, hear what I have to say or whatever. That's the happiness that I'm after. So 6 today, hopefully 8 or 9 in the future, if that makes sense. You look skeptical, Ron. I don't know what that look is supposed to convey, but that's.
I'm sorry. Forgive me. I was just going through your Instagram reel in my head. So forgive me for being distracted by some of your recent vacations.
Again, here's the thing about that ladder, Ron. It's arbitrary. Mm-hmm. My 6 to you may look like, like oh my God, you're
unhappy.
Not unhappy. 6 to me might look like a world of like happy with the ability to have great potential in the future, right? Like I still see a horizon out there that offers more options.
So I think that's a really good point. And I'm not going to pick your recent city. I'm going to pick another city. Paris. For us, this coast Paris, for your coast Tokyo, for example. Mm-hmm. The ability to go to Tokyo or Paris whenever we want. Okay. To me, that would put me at a minimum of 7, 7 to 8, because it says that I have the means, the opportunity to enjoy a culture when I want to. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I think you're a lot closer to that number than you are to a 6, which is I'm just okay. I'm making ends meet. I'm just getting by.
Again,
like it's relative, though.
Exactly.
His 6 might be your 8. And for me, the
Your
moments
scale only goes to 5. I know.
the moments of happiness, like those could be a 9 at that moment in time. You know, like if you took a snapshot of that moment in time, if you took a snapshot of when I go pick up my grandkids and they're just so happy to see me, you know, that's a 9 at that moment in time. And so I'm not always at a 4. You know, I'll jump up to a high, you know, like an electron getting a blast of energy, and then fall back down to, you know, my steady state.
Yeah, but see, but okay. So the challenge I have with that is the ability to go pick up your grandchildren, to have the time, the reliable transportation, the income to go do that should afford you some reflection on your life and say, you know what? Life in general is pretty good. I'm
But
pretty happy.
but that's that satisfaction. That's different for me than happiness. Satisfaction is I'm doing what I need to do. You know, I'm doing the business of life so that I can do these other things. That's satisfaction for me.
You've
That's not
been
happiness.
blessed. You've been blessed to have the time and health and
Absolutely.
income to do it.
And that's why I said I'm extraordinarily appreciative and thankful for all of that. But
Yeah.
that's not happiness for me.
And Nick, with you and your 6, I'm struggling with you too, bro, because I think you're sandbagging. This ain't spades we're playing, okay? This is.
No, well, he was a Sandman. He was Sandman.
Right.
He is sandbagging, right there.
Judging, though, Ron. I think you're
His rap
judging
name was Sandman. So
because what I would say is to you, if 7 sounds right to you, okay, 7. It does, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me. Like what the number is, 7, 8, maybe 6, 7, 8. All that's arbitrary. If you put my life into the hands of 100 different people and they get to choose the number, right? Maybe some would say 9, maybe 8, 7. Like it's all very arbitrary based on the perspective of the person. The reason why I chose 6, and I want to be very clear about this, is that I am wildly happy in general. I'm clear on all the blessings that I have, my wife, my mother, my friends, you know, the opportunities that I have. But there's such amazing opportunity available in this life that I expect to be a part of. And those things will provide increased happiness when they can happen, devoid of having to worry about anything extraneous or exogenous to just the desire to do them. Even if it just means doing nothing, even if it means writing a book, even if it means like whatever it is. And so in the meantime, I'm extremely happy, but I know there's big bites at the apple that I want. So if 7 makes you feel better, 8 makes you feel better, that's cool. The bottom line is that I feel happy, right? I feel happy with the potential for much more available.
This gets into a whole other conversation about contentment, because it sounds like you may be happy, but you're not content. And I guess my question is, if you were told you will never make another dollar more than whatever level you're at now, this is the best you're ever going to do, would you be happy or would you be sad?
I would be sad. That would make me sad.
I thought so.
That would make me very sad. In some ways, I'm the mirror opposite of Darren. Darren has more contentment than happiness. I have more happiness than contentment, right? I'm not done. I'm not done.
Right.
I'm trying to break chains of constraint that allow me to truly, fully express the tremendous potential that I feel inside of me, right? Unrestrained. Like, and that's something that honestly, when I look at someone like Donald Trump, not to always bring it back to him, but that's a guy who's unconstrained. Now, I don't know how he got to be that person, you know, but when all the cards were against him, when he ran for president the first time and they laughed at him, when he was on stage with all the other lifelong politicians and they figured like he would fumble, when he was up against Hillary Clinton, when he was impeached twice, he never seemed to waver from his self-conception that I deserve all this. This belongs to me and I'm not giving it up, right? That's the level of conviction that I have in my own, that I'm even trying to foster better in my deservedness to be able to live the life that I believe is important to me without constraint. And so that to me is the ultimate happiness.
See, I think that's really, really a great synopsis, Nick, because I understand you a little bit better and I understand the difference between you and me better right now. And I think the difference is I have, and my wife feels the same way, but less passionate than I am about this. Our job is to break some family curses, of which poverty, low income, whatever, food stamps, student loans. I'm in the business of breaking those curses. And as I reflect upon my life, we've pretty much checked those boxes, and that's why I feel really good, because yes, I do want our net worth to grow. I want all the right indicators to grow. But ultimately I can look back and say, you know what? The mission's been accomplished now. And now I don't want to lose it.
Right.
I got to protect it and make sure it's passed. And that's what motivated me and still motivates me. And is there a bigger bite of the pie out there? Absolutely there is. But I got this pie, and as long as I don't lose this pie, I'm pretty happy. I think that's the difference.
That's cool. Here's the thing. Here's what you may not know about me. You know that I don't share that same background story. Like I didn't come up, missing meals or wondering what was going to happen, whatever. I came up very comfortably middle class, right? And that's my fear, is that the comfort with just, continuing on that steady state is an inhibitor to me being all that I can be. So let's say, for example, you feel like you started like below the line and you're
upper lower class.
Huh?
I learned in sociology I was upper lower class.
Okay, you were upper lower class, and you felt like, wow, I see what was happening around me. Father's a truck driver, mother, whatever, and so the fact that you far excelled past that is a great win, and that's amazing. My parents, my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and for much of my growing up years, and my father went out and worked or whatever, and brought home the bacon, and everything was cool. I was able to get a lot of stuff that I wanted, but and I have excelled past them. But the distance between me and them, and the distance between you and your parents, is probably not as big, apples to apples. And I feel like I don't want to just be, because I've seen friends of mine. I know people who grew up in my whatever. And the fact that they don't know that didn't have to have the grit to do whatever, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. They didn't necessarily always, meet all the options that they had. And that's what's fun to me about this life. This life is about trying to fully express all the gifts that you've been given. And that's what makes me happy. It makes me happy to feel like I am fully expressed, fully accomplished, And so that's how it works.
Going back to our fine friend at UCLA who wouldn't give me any play because I drove a convertible Rabbit, there were plenty of people in that segment, Nick, that you're talking about, where it would appear they had everything going for them, but they didn't have that grit that you and I have, where it's like, no, I need to hustle. I need to go get mine. Right. And others were like, whatever. And they didn't have the same mobility.
Yeah. Well, and I remember I had to make a conscious decision about, it was 2005. I had to make a conscious decision about whether I was going to take business to the next level or spend time, raising my family. And, I had an opportunity to get a major contract with a military for some development stuff. and I had to decide which was more important. Was it, being a dad or being a millionaire? And I chose dad. And, and so that is essentially when that grit, determination, working outside the system, all that stuff just ended that day, because I had to make that decision, because I couldn't do both anymore. I was balancing it, well, you guys know I had my own business for a while, and I was balancing it. I was doing stuff, but I had gotten to a point where I had to choose. And I was like, I can take this to the next level. We were doing stuff that just now is coming out in terms of the technology and GPS. We were way ahead of it. But it was a choice between being a dad and that. And since I already had kids, that's what I had to choose. And so, so part of it, I'm thinking, once I do retire, maybe I'll recapture that magic and go back out there and, and then maybe then strive for something and get to that point that Nick's talking about, that, realizing my full potential. Having 6 degrees was a manifestation of that, but that is not all that I'm capable of doing. But I never got a chance to realize what my potential was, because I had to make some choices as to what was most important.
I just to keep the same metaphor going, I come back to the cave and I say, I've provided provisions for our family and hopefully for generations or generation. Mission accomplished. Now it's time to go figure out, how to, see the world, play golf, go to more football games. It's more the self-actualization phase, because if I continue to chase dollars, I may be so poor that all I have is money at the end of this life.
Yeah.
And that's the fear.
Always. Well, Darren, you mentioned that you're a Stoic, and one of the principles of Stoicism is that the destination is never the goal; it's the journey, right? It's the striving for the thing that is where you get your enjoyment, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that I particularly embrace.
Yeah, and that's part of it as well, which is why, without having that vision of what happens in retirement, my number drops, because I don't know what that is yet. So, it may shoot up, because I may, and a lot of it has to do with just innovating, coming up with new ideas and doing really cool stuff, because that's what I used to do. Led the way and transformed a couple of industries years ago, because it was just fun to do. But, now maybe, between AI and cybersecurity and whatnot, I might be able to do that.
I think when you retire, all of us are going to be on a call rotation where we're like, Darren, you okay? You okay today?
Yeah, I got one word for you, Darren: pickleball. So that's gonna get you through retire. This is a great topic, Ron. I appreciate you bringing this up, because these are the big questions that we need to be thinking about. So I think you've given us some great stuff.
And I was personal. I wasn't obfuscating. I actually shared.
Well, and I think that, as friends, it helps us understand maybe some blind spots we had with each other, and explains our thinking, because I was curious. My whole premise was economics contributes to happiness. That's why I asked about the $10 million. But you pointed out very clearly, no, dude, the money is not what stresses me out in life right now. So very helpful.
Very cool.
Heart and shot.
Very cool. Yep. And before we get there, if you guys have any thoughts about your happiness level or responses to how we calculate our happiness level, have at it. We look forward to your comments and stuff. So before we get out of here, Ron, let's get to your parting shot for the week.
All right. So as I was going through the prep for this week, I came across this YouTuber. Her name is Kara Nicole, and she can't be more than like 35. So she appeals probably to Darren and my children's generation. And she is a YouTuber that talks about personal finance, education, and weaves pop culture. And she talks about a couple things. I'm sorry, I forgot we have a video. Can you show the video?
Yep, let's do it.
How social media keeps you poor that goes deeper into this topic. Made a video titled How Social Media Keeps You Poor that goes deeper into this topic. But the bottom line is that I think scrolling is a gateway drug to spending. And here is what I mean by that. If you think about it, social media is heavily rooted in comparison and escapism. And it encourages us to chase those two things through consumption, watching videos, liking pictures, viewing people's stories. Even though those things aren't physical, they're still a version of consumption. So if you're already associating escapism and status with digital consumption, you are incredibly primed to just translate that over to physical consumption, aka spending your money on random things you find online. And because social media is turning our brains into these dopamine-obsessed blobs with no impulse control, you're more likely to impulse shop and buy things you really don't need or maybe can't even afford. Research shows that compulsive spending is often caused by things like depression or anxiety. And like we already covered, we know that social media is leading to more depression and anxiety. In other words, social media is creating the perfect environment for us to fall into impulse spending, into debt, into these loops of hyperconsumption. Made a video titled How Social...
So that's a real good short on YouTube. She has longer form videos. One of my favorite that I saw is she analyzed the cost of Carrie from Sex and the City, how much her wardrobe would cost and how much it would cost to live in New York. And she went into, okay, she's a freelance writer, so she's making between $1,500 and $5,000 a month back then. And you know, her rent, maybe it's rent controlled. Here's how much it's costing. And here's her clothing budget. And she shows that Vogue magazine did a analysis, and they said in one season, when they looked at all the designer brands and shoes, it would have cost $150,000 to outfit her. And what she does is she weaves that into practical advice on not being fooled by influencers and people that pretend they are living this lavish lifestyle that causes people to be jealous and then spend money they don't have to impress people they don't know. So really like her. My older daughter was already aware of her, and I'm sending this to a couple of other 20-somethings that I mentor, and really like her, and good content for people of all ages.
Nice. Good stuff. Again, what's her name?
Her name is Kara Nicole.
Kara Nicole. Okay, we'll put that link in the show notes and people can check it out. So good topics today, Ron. You've enriched our thinking and really challenged us in a couple of very good ways. So if you guys out there have thoughts about any of the things that you've seen today, we are excited to hear from you. And please do give us a like and a share. And any other words before we get out of here, guys? Darren, do you feel purged and like your life has been lightened? I hope so. Mine does. I feel good.
Of course, I feel good. But and like I said, happiness comes in moments for me. So there are moments of happiness, and I do get joy out of life. There's just not a steady state of it. It happens, and then it's back to the it's like I said. Touchdown, hand the ball to the ref, go back to the sideline.
But none of us are going through life being happy all the time.
Oh, Ron, don't relitigate this. We've had an hour of discussion on that. So, Darren, us Stoics have to stick together. So, anyway.
Yes, we Stoics.
Anyway, guys, we appreciate you guys hanging with us, and we'll see you next time on We've Got Issues. All right? Peace out.
Yeah.